Seat Radio. It is March 4th, 2025. You're on my 13-mile commute home. Welcome to the show. Well, you're probably wondering why I did not do a show yesterday. Usually Mondays are passenger seat radio days, but I was feeling rather sick yesterday morning when I got up. My stomach was a mess. My head was a mess. It was very unpleasant. And it was one of those days where to put it lightly, you don't feel like you should be more than 30 seconds from a toilet, that sort of day. Yeah, and even today, I don't feel super great, but listen, had plenty of stuff to do today, so I had to come in. Plus, you wouldn't get a show if I didn't go into work today. So there you have it. Welcome to the two people that have popped in. Welcome to the show. So, yeah, I've got a couple things. Let me see. I have a little sticky of crap that I wrote down, since I can't get to my keep list while I'm recording on the phone. So, I had some problems with my PC lately. I think I alluded to that on another episode. But what I really wanted to share was what the outcome was. Hey now, Justin, what's up, man? Because what went down was not something that even a seasoned computer troubleshooter would have been able to find. It was just blind luck that I figured it out. So let me tell you what was going on. So I was having a problem. I have Windows 11, 24 H22 or whatever, but latest, right? Same as everybody else. And hey now, Alex is here. And what was happening was, and you'll see this all over the internet if you go looking for it, is I was experiencing a problem with what I call micro stutters, and it was really hard to even explain, right? Like, if you know what you're looking for on the internet, it's probably out there. But how do you explain that sometimes when you click the top of a window, or you click the close button on a window, it stalls, it stops, and then it closes. So you click on something, it doesn't happen, and then it pauses and then does it. And it was making me freaking mental. When I was editing videos in DaVinci Resolve, right? I would go to click on something to apply a filter to it or an effect or something, and it would sit there and pause, and then it would let go. I could not figure out what it was. I figured, okay, it's got to be something I'm running. I don't know. So I tried everything. I couldn't figure out what was going on. So finally I said, you know what? Screw it. It's time to give this PC an enema, right? You know how Windows is. Every 6 months to 12 months, you give it an enema and she's good as new. Now I will say, I will give Windows 11 a nod, because honestly, Windows 7 had to be reinstalled like every 6 months. Windows 10 you could get away with about a year, and Windows 11, oh hey, Javier's here too. Windows 11, I mean, it typically doesn't slow down and it doesn't turn to crap, at least not after I debloat it, right? So I figured, okay, you know what, I'm due. Let's go ahead and clean everything up, right? So I did my backups. I did all of the exports of configurations for, DaVinci Resolve or Directory Opus. If I were smart, I'd write this crap down, but I don't, and I do it each and every time I do it, reboot or reinstall rather. I go through the same stuff. I use a combination of debloating. So I always use the stock Windows ISO when I do my installs. I don't use Tiny11 or any of that other stuff because I don't trust somebody else with my operating system. Too much shit goes through there, right? I mean, your banking, your personal communications, if that's your thing, right? I mean, everything goes through your PC. The last thing you want to do is use some sort of an unofficial image. So what I'll do is I'll get the official image, I'll gut it with Rufus first, write it to my boot media, and then once I boot up, I use a combination of tools. Chris Titus's what's it called? WinUtil, and then there's a couple of other ones that I'll use too. And most of the time, and the other stuff I do by hand, right? So when I debloat, it's a pretty smooth machine at that point. I don't use any Microsoft accounts, no Microsoft accounts. That immediately debloats your machine, because once you're tied into Microsoft's ecosystem, a lot of shit starts running in the background. So I decided, okay, so I backed everything up. I've got this down to a science, by the way. I backed everything up, and then I disconnect all my external drives, and you'll do that too the first time you accidentally wipe out one of your external drives thinking it was your C drive. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. So I disconnect all the other drives so I know for a fact that I'm working with the system drive. I mean, you can never be too careful. So I reinstalled Windows 11. Everything seemed okay. Right? Installed drivers. I installed all my basic, I do this at night, right? So before I go to bed, I almost have a fully working machine, a daily work machine, right? Now, it doesn't have all my ancillary stuff in it yet, but for the most part, I'm back up and running within about 2 hours-ish. That's including debloat time. So now my machine's back up and running, and I get a blue screen of death. Now, if you've been in Windows 11 long enough, blue screens of death are almost gone. I mean, there's almost no such thing as a blue screen of death anymore. Windows 10, I can still see blue screens of death, but Windows 11, the blue screens of death just don't happen. And when it does happen, there's something pretty seriously fucked up. So I was blue screening. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And so, you do your standard thing, go to the event viewer, see what it is. And because the blue screen of death doesn't tell you shit. It gives you some basic, normal, non-critical processes failed. I think that's what it was. Critical processes failed. So I'm like, okay, what the fuck is that? So now I'm really puzzled. So I'm thinking, okay, remember, by the time the blue screen shows up, I've already got all my drives plugged back in. I'm business as usual. I just went through a complete reinstall process. All my drivers, everything is back up and running before the first blue screen hits. And I'm like, okay, so what's in the event viewer? So I go to the event viewer, and it tells me there's a failure of drivers on RAID device 2. Number one, I don't use RAID. Number two, if I was using RAID, I only have 2 drives in my machine. So they're 0 and 1, right? But in this case, it was RAID number 2. All right, so I think, okay, it's a fluke. It's a fluke. Fine, okay, no problem. So then I boot back up and I'm fine. Fine for a day, fine for a day and a half. Bam, blue screen of death. Then, on this time around, the blue screen of death happens out of nowhere. There was no rhyme or reason. Not running app A, not running app B, not putting the system under load, not accessing drive X, drive Y. It doesn't matter. The blue screen, completely fucking random. And then sometimes it would boot loop in the blue screen. So you blue screen, reboot, it would blue screen again on the way up, the second time to reboot, and then you're back at fucking Windows cannot boot. Would you like to try to run a recovery? Blah, blah, blah. You're fuck. So what's going on? So I started disconnecting everything. I disconnected all of my external drives. It seemed fine for a day and a half. Bam, blue screen of death. Fuck. I mean, just unbelievable. Hey, Manny, I won't say it. I was going to say, I work with Manny. I was going to talk about his new look, his new style, but I won't say that. Nice to have you here, buddy. So now I'm blue screening boot looping, and I have no clue what's going on. So, okay, what am I going to do now? What happened? There's no rhyme or reason. You can't make it happen. It just magically happens. Now, those are the worst kind of problems to troubleshoot, right? If you could make it happen, you could then tie it to an event or a piece of hardware or something. No way to tie it to an event. I'm clueless. I am literally. Oh shit! Is that one of the driverless cars? Hang on. I'm by a Waymo on the freeway. I didn't think the Waymos went on the freeway. Creepy shit. Did I tell you guys that a Waymo dropped a couple off at the hotel I stayed at for that magic show? They got out of the car and everyone's kind of looking at them like, so how was it? I mean, I cannot imagine using a Waymo as a ride share. Absolutely fucking creepy. Yeah, it's a driverless car. I didn't think they were allowed on the freeway. That's interesting. I'm not going to take the camera off and show you because it's just not worth it, but it's creepy as fuck. These Waymos are all over the place in downtown Phoenix. Anyway, he's going to try to get in my lane. This is crazy. It's really... Oh no, there is a driver in there. Whew. I was going to say, I didn't think that they let the driverless cars on the freeway, but thank God there was somebody in there. Holy shit. Anywho, so I'm at wit's end. I have no idea what's going on. So I start, what you do when you troubleshoot, you start Googling the error message from the fucking event viewer. Well, if you've got RAID 2 this, RAID blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, I don't have RAID, so what's causing this problem? And it's like, reset your BIOS and, disable AHCI, change this, set that. This was my life for like 3 days, was trying everything that I could. And then trying to enjoy my computer in between the blue screens because you couldn't predict it, right? So finally, I kept Googling. Finally, I found something that says, hey, I bet you've got a WD580 SSD in your machine. This wasn't an answer to me. It was an answer to somebody else. And they're like, yeah, do a firmware upgrade on your SSD. And I'm like, shit, I wonder what the fuck I've got in my PC. Because I bought it as a pre-build, right? So I don't remember. I don't know. And so I pulled open my case and took a look. WD580. Bam. So I went to Western Digital's website, got their dashboard, and the dashboard allowed me to flash a new firmware. And so I did it, rebooted the machine. Fine. No more blue screens. Imagine the concept. You're using Windows 11 one day, just minding your own business, and all of a sudden it just starts blue screening out of nowhere. Blue screen. You didn't change any hardware, didn't install any software. Windows Update just fucked you, because that's what happened. Something in Windows Update was the problem. Now, you don't know what it was, right? So you couldn't roll it back. But in this case, yes, flashing firmware on my SSD solved the blue screen of death problem. I wished the story was over, but it's not. So now I'm back in business again. I'm waiting for the blue screen to come, but it doesn't. And I'm thinking I'm good. So now I can really start flushing my workstation back out again, right? I put all the essential shit on, but I didn't do all the ancillary stuff because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. So now that I'm thinking I'm feeling good, I'm much love. I go ahead and start reinstalling my regular daily driver stuff, everything, front, soup to nuts. I got it. Everything gets put back together. Everything is running soundly, and the stutter comes back. God damn it! So I've gone through all of this shit to fix the initial stutter. That I couldn't get rid of. I had to flash my ass off on the firmware, and only to find that the stutter came back. Now I'm livid. I am fucking livid. I cannot begin to imagine. Hey, what's going on, man? Welcome. I cannot imagine for a minute what's going on. I didn't change any software. I'm using the same standard shit. Well, to make a longer story shorter, it turns out that Malwarebytes, which is the last thing I installed, by the way, at the end of the day, when I'm doing a rebuild, Malwarebytes was causing the stutter. Now, my guess is that Malwarebytes also was a victim of a Windows 11 upgrade or an update. So I was suffering on multiple fronts. with no clear answer on any of them. But as soon as I disabled Malwarebytes, the stutter went away. It hasn't been back since. So, you know, an old boss of mine who was rather sick in the head, she was crazy. She did teach me one thing that was useful. When something stops working, when something goes wrong, when something isn't behaving the way it's supposed to, you ask yourself, what changed? And in this case, nothing changed. No hardware changes, no software changes. A simple Windows 11 update opened an umbrella up my ass, basically. It dicked up my antivirus, and then when I reinstalled everything, some other conflict came as part of the update that then caused me to blue screen. Unbelievable. Anyway, the PC is done. It is all back up and running, back up and going. Everything's perfect. Everything is exactly the way it should be. So that was the end of the PC crusade. And I was thinking to myself, you know, I kind of know what I'm doing. How do regular people do it? How do people that don't have 30 years in technical troubleshooting and PC repair and operating systems and low-level drivers and registry entries, how do those poor assholes, how do they get around a problem like this? One day they turn their computer on and it just blue screens. What do? Take it to Geek Squad? Pay $300? I don't know. But I was thinking, if I ended up slamming my head against the wall over and over again, how do the normies do it? I don't know. Maybe that's why normies don't have PCs anymore. They have phones. You know? Could be. So anyway, that ends that story. Well, even Macs are, I don't even think Macs are immune to that sort of thing. But who knows? I don't know. All right. So here's an interesting little story. A lot of you who are probably watching this are old Retro Gaming Radio fans, right? And Retro Gaming Radio was my old podcast. It ran like 15 years. And, you know, it all focused on classic and retro gaming, right? Had a pretty good following. It was, if anything is my 15 minutes of fame, well, 15 years of fame, whatever, it would be Retro Gaming Radio. A lot of people all across the globe were Retro Gaming Radio fans. So that's kind of cool. But I started Retro Gaming Radio for really one main reason. I wanted to meet my heroes. I wanted to meet David Crane and Gary Kitchen and Don Bluth and all of the people that influenced my life. Eugene Jarvis, Jeff Minter, you know, all of the people that Howard Scott Warshaw, I just keep thinking of these names as I go. Ed Logg, right? There's all these people that defined video gaming, that really were the frontier of video gaming. Paul Norman from Cosme, all of these people, I said, I got to meet them. I want to interview them. I want to know what makes them tick. How did they come up with that idea? How did they come up with that music? That music's so damn catchy. Does Paul Norman have a degree in music? Because most programmers don't know their way out of a paper bag when it comes to writing music. How come he could do it? I wanted all of those answers, right? So I started the show and I got to meet almost everyone. There were 2 or 3 holdouts that I've never been able to interview, that I really wanted to interview. Chuck and Doug Doherty, that was the brothers that created the original Questron, Legacy of the Ancients, Secret of the Silver Blades. I wanted to meet them so bad. They're recluses. You can't find them. They're nowhere to be found anywhere. Never could find them. Eugene Jarvis wouldn't give me the time of day. I've never been able to catch him, right? I've emailed his company. I've emailed him. I've done everything that I could to try to get an interview with Eugene Jarvis. Can't make it happen. And then, who was the last one that I couldn't get? Maybe there was only 2. I'm sure there was somebody else that I was trying for and I couldn't get, but I got everybody else. Now, so I got reached out to, so now that I can circle back, that's sort of the backstory here. Somebody reaches out to me on Discord, like Friday night, I think, and said, hey, I really want to thank you for the video you did on Audiomaster 4 for the Amiga. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, there's a blast from the past, Audiomaster 4. And for those of you who follow my YouTube channel or my radio show, I've talked about this before. Audiomaster 4 was like this incredible sequencing software where you could take a digital sample and resequence pieces of it into a full song. It's unbelievable. If you haven't seen the video, I think almost anybody here who's probably watching would be interested in it. Go search the channel, go search YouTube. There's 2 videos, one that just shows the sequencing and then another one that shows the software. And so this guy found it, saw it, got a hold of my Discord from the YouTube channel, dropped in and said, I just want to thank you for covering this software. I'm the developer. I wrote this software for the Amiga. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here. And so we had like this endless chat for like hours and hours, talking about, you know, the stuff that he was doing and about, you know, piracy killed his software, blah, blah, blah. But it was so cool to, like, out of nowhere. So I used to have to hunt these people down for interviews or to talk to them. And now, thanks to YouTube and the videos that I make and that sort of thing, people are finding me. So maybe I need to do a video on Legacy of the Ancients, and maybe I can get those Doherty brothers to reach out and say something, because I would love to talk to them. I really would like to talk to them. But it was so cool. This guy just comes out of nowhere. And then he asked me not to use his name, and I'm not sure why, but he said, please don't use my name. I said, I want to talk about you. I want to talk about the product and stuff on my podcast. I said, is that okay with you that we talked and you know, you shared this stuff with me? And he's like, yeah. And then he writes me a little while. Then I write him back and I say, hey, I don't think I actually got your name. I want to be able to credit you properly. And he gives me his name, and then a few minutes later he writes, he says, can you keep me anonymous? And I'm like, yeah, of course. If there's one thing I know how to do, is keep secrets. Because we all know, and this is a little side note for those of you who are new to Passenger Seat Radio, Retro Gaming Radio, I got to interview the great Don Bluth. Don Bluth, master animator, hailed from Disney, Secret of NIMH, American Tail, Anastasia, Dragon's Lair, Space Ace. You guys know who he is, right? His number 2 is Gary Goldman. Gary Goldman. Those two are inseparable. They were at Disney together, and they haven't left each other's side since. They're not a couple. Calm down. But they are big time. Do I take questions? Sure. If I can read it while in a red light, yeah, go ahead. But I interviewed Gary Goldman. My interview style, for those of you who know it, is very laid back, very conversational. And there's been more than one time where my guests maybe say things that, because they're so relaxed and they're safe with me, they'll tell me things that probably shouldn't be public. And I can at least name 2 occasions, but there's probably more. One of them, he'll probably hear this and be thankful I didn't mention it. But Gary Goldman and I sat down in an interview. I interviewed Don Bluth and Gary Goldman a couple of different times for hours at a time. Fascinating people, amazing people. Don Bluth's book is amazing. The one that came out a couple of years ago. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. But anyway, so I'm talking to Gary Goldman, and those guys worked on The Rescuers, right? The Rescuers, the cartoon with the 2 little mice. And inside of that cartoon, inside of that animated feature, is a picture of a topless woman. Now, the copies you get today or watch on streaming or whatever, they're not going to have it. They've been scrubbed. But when the VHS released for its anniversary, nobody caught that frame was still in there. And I've got the videotape still. I've got that wrapped up as a memento. That's what I get for driving and talking at the same time. Gary Goldman actually told me by name who it was that stuck that in the cartoon. And I'm thinking, shit, can't you get in trouble for something like that? But I didn't say anything. He's giving me gold. the next day, Gary Goldman calls me up and he says, "Hey, you know that interview we did?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I probably said a few things that shouldn't be in there." And I'm like, "I was kind of wondering why you were naming people by name at Disney that were putting nudie pictures inside a kids animation." And he's like, "Can we have a do-over on that one?" So I went back and I got another interview with him. We talked about the same sort of things. Of course, we didn't talk about that. But and yes, I do still have the original recording, and no, I'm not going to share it. But I do still have it. I still have a copy of it archived. And I told him, I said, "There's no way in hell anybody's ever going to hear this." I said, "You have my word." I said, "I'm going to keep it, but no one's ever going to hear it." And that's a lot of trust. So, but yeah, so it's just funny. But yeah, it was Eugene Jarvis. I didn't get, and I didn't get the Doherty brothers, which pisses me off. And then I never got to interview Jeff Minter either. And that should have been a pretty easy get. He's the guy that, the Mutant Camels and Tempest 2000, all that psychedelic shit. Never got around to, was never an opportunity to talk to him. I think he's also a little bit reclusive. Anywho, but yeah, so I thought it was really neat that this guy reached out and said, thank you for keeping the spirit of this alive. It really made me smile to see my stuff, being shown, blah, blah, blah. It was neat. It was fun. It was really cool. And again, it's one of those things where, like, you get to a certain level and people will come to you. That's sort of how Retro Gaming Radio worked out, right? Once it was popular enough, then I started having people reach out and say, "Hey, you want to interview this guy?" And I'm like, "Who?" It's like, "No, thank you. I will take a pass, but thank you." But when I hit 20,000 followers or subscribers on YouTube, all of a sudden my email box is starting to get flooded by people wanting me to review products. And so now I'm having to be a lot more picky, where I used to be, I had to beg for something and still didn't usually get it. Now, if B-Link is watching, I want you to send me one of your mini gaming PCs so I can recommend it over the Steam Deck for people who want to plug something into their TV and use it. So B-Link, if you're listening, I will definitely take a sample product and review it for you on my channel. Too funny. So speaking of which, I've only got a couple of minutes here, so this is the last thing I got. So I've soared to pure pretentiousness. I now have one of those little light up clocks that sit behind you that tells how many YouTube subscribers you have. I know you know what I'm talking about. You've seen it all over the place. And this is a very, very popular clock. And it's called a clock, but it's like an LED display, but you can put whatever you want on it. But what most people use it for, like subscriber counts or putting your Discord server in the background behind you while you're recording. So I decided to become very pretentious and get one of those. And so I got it. I had no idea the fucking rabbit hole that I was going to be going down by getting in on one of these things. So first off, they're about $30. You get one at AliExpress for about, I think it's $35, $36. Amazon's going to charge you $60. And normally I don't order anything from AliExpress that I'm not willing to lose money on. But in this case, from this seller, this one time, the product from AliExpress arrived as is, and it worked, and it was what you expected it to be. So out of the box, this thing has a handful of functions, right? It'll connect to Wi-Fi, it'll get your location, it'll show you the weather, the time, all this other stuff. And it does have a basic YouTube subscriber along with a few other services that you can display on this thing. Well, it turns out that there is an entire custom firmware community for this clock, this LED clock. It's called Awtrix, AWTRIX, and it's on its third incarnation. It's a custom firmware, a custom app, and get this, there's an entire community of people building something called flows for it. So think of it like when you do home assistant integration, right? You use like if this then that or whatever it is now. Yeah, you can actually You actually set, it's crazy. Just go search for this Autrix and see what's going on. I had no idea that some cheap little LED clock from fucking AliExpress had this giant community and ecosystem surrounding it. It just blew my mind. And so I got sucked down that rabbit hole and ended up getting what I needed. And now I've learned so much about how flows work, and I know how to make flows work, and I know how to put custom graphics in there. It's absolutely crazy. If you're looking for like a weekend dick around project, buy one of those from AliExpress, flash the custom firmware on it, and start exploring these flows and all this other stuff. It's pretty interesting. All right, well, listen, gang, I am closing in on home. My Wi-Fi is going to kick in. God knows what that'll do to the connection. I better get off now. This is Shane R. Monroe, Passenger Seat Radio, saying we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.